Topping today's news, the police reporting a crime-filled weekend with several shootings. Major crime reforms by the government expected to yield results in the new fiscal year, but the opposition has its doubts, and 2 fatal accidents on Eleuthera this weekend. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Jarino Saunders. This is your JCN Evening News, and it is a pleasure to have you join us. A 28-year-old man and a 17-year-old female are in hospital after being shot just before 8 p.m. on Sunday at a residence on Ballot Road between Carmichael Road and Fire Trail Road. Police say the victim was attending a birthday party for his son when a male armed with a handgun exited a gray Japanese vehicle. The suspect fired gunshots at the victim, who attempted to seek refuge in the home. The victim was pursued into the house by the suspect and subsequently shot multiple times. It is further reported that during this incident, a juvenile female who was inside the home was also shot. Both victims were taken to hospital via EMS personnel, and at present their conditions listed as stable. A 36-year-old woman who was shot in Yellowella Gardens No. 3 early Sunday remains in hospital in critical condition. According to reports, around 6:30 a.m., police were notified that the woman was shot while at a residence on Melbourne Road in Yellowella No. 3. The victim was taken to hospital by a private vehicle. Police are questioning the victim's 37-year-old boyfriend in relation to this incident. Reports are that a handgun was also seized from the male suspect. Also on Saturday, a 30-year-old man of Garden Hills was rushed to hospital after being shot shortly after 9 p.m. while on Iguana Way off Carmichael Road. Police reports say an unknown male entered the premises where there were a group of men gathered, and when the man brandished a handgun, the group of men scattered, but he opened fire in the direction of the group, resulting in the victim being shot to the upper body. The victim was taken to hospital in a private vehicle where he remains in stable condition. Meanwhile, police say 2 men, ages 35 and 29 years old, are hospitalized following an altercation between the two while at a bar on Carmichael Road around 9 p.m. on Saturday, resulting in both men being stabbed multiple times. The 35-year-old is listed in stable condition, while the 29-year-old is listed in critical condition at last reports. Attorney General Ryan Pinder is detailing some of the major reforms being undertaken at the Office of the Attorney General, set to transform the criminal justice system in the 2024-2025 budget year. Senator Pinder outlined eminent comprehensive reforms to the judiciary.
The government, under the leadership of Prime Minister Philip Brave Davis, has changed the status quo when it comes to criminal justice reform. We have changed the status quo on penalties and offenses such as the Anti-Gang Act. We have changed the status quo when it comes to the granting of bail. We have changed the status quo on the functions of the judiciary with the amendments to the Supreme Court Act, the Magistrates Act, and the passage of the Court Services Act, which is to come in force on July 1 of this year. We will table in the coming weeks a new firearms bill, which will repeal and replace the current Firearms Act, incorporating stiffer penalties for firearms crimes and incorporating an approach that criminalizes current approaches to firearms trafficking, such as ghost guns and trafficking in gun components.
Despite progress on the many amendments tabled this fiscal year, leader of the opposition business, Senator Darren Henfield, says the legislation has yet to affect the country's ongoing crime crisis.
The Attorney General talks about all of the legislation that he introduced, and the gang bill being one of them. Well, the gang bill, my understanding, was introduced so that we could mitigate the formation and movement of gangs in this country, the killings on the streets. But since you've introduced this gang bill, I've seen very little difference. Over the last weekend, we had 3 killed in this country, young people. And so let your bills take root first. Let them bear fruit first. before you stand up and brag about them. Because that's not helping the young people in this country to resolve their conflicts. Bragging about it in this place doesn't help Bahamians.
Attorney General Pinder also announced that the government has launched a legislative reform project to fully review and reform the penal code. However, Senator Henfield was critical of the government for its continuous lack of consultation. Chairman of the Free National Movement, Dr. Dwayne Sands, says the Davis administration remains clueless on crime. With the murder count nearing 60, now at 57, Dr. Sands is criticizing the government for what he calls a lack of crime intervention, approaching 3 years into their term.
After mainly ignoring the crime problem month after month, Emperor Brave decided that he had to say something on crime. But it was only the second so-called crime plan. Now, you remember he said, and I quote, "We are now preparing the most comprehensive approach yet. Our frontline response to the present crisis is to bring forward a strategy which is already in the advanced stages of planning." Now, what do he mean by that? What did he mean by bring forward a strategy? Why didn't they bring a strategy before all the murders? Were they sitting on it? The truth is they didn't have a comprehensive approach or plan. And the strategy ain't working because they did not have a strategy.
Dr. Sands says the government's 5-pillar crime strategy and anti-gang legislation remains unfruitful.
In his January address, remember, Emperor Brave proclaimed, put simply, our first phase is to clear out the gangs from our neighborhoods. And he said that our police, armed with new resources and resolve, will strike hard against these gangs. We're not just disrupting them, we're dismantling them. Well, the neighborhoods have not been cleared and the gangs have not been dismantled. You see, back then he had big words, but they were only empty words. We had the mercy of criminals and murderers because the Prime Minister and the PLP are more interested in dividing up state assets like BPL.
The F&M chairman says the Davis administration continues to have big talk but little action, citing unresolved issues with the cost of living, the Grand Bahama economy still struggling, and conditions at the Princess Margaret Hospital as still unsolved. The Ministry of Labor and the Public Service remains optimistic about Bahamians' employment prospects as a result of Friday's update by the Bahamas National Statistical Institute regarding the country's unemployment rate, now at 9.9% at the end of 2023. In a statement released late Friday, Minister for the Public Service, Pierre Glover-Roll, noted that for much of the past 20 years, the unemployment rate has hovered in the double digits, with the Davis administration being responsible for bringing unemployment to its lowest rates since 2008. She said the government is particularly pleased to see that its policies are making an impact on youth unemployment, as the number of unemployed youth decreased by 1,475 in the fourth quarter of 2023. She said the Davis administration will continue to build on this track record of success by implementing effective economic and labor policies to create opportunities for even more Bahamians. And finally, in this segment, while a vast majority of Bahamians want to see a reduction in the cost of electricity and a reliable supply of energy, many do not want to see the government sell off yet another government entity that has the potential to be profitable, which has raised concerns regarding the newly announced 25-year deal with private company Island Grid to take over transmission and distribution rights for Bahamas Power and Light. Seeking to ease some of those concerns, Attorney General Senator Ryan Pinder explained during the Senate debate, during the budget debate, that the government can buy back BPL's shares if the need arises.
BPL has the right to purchase at fair market value 9% of that SPV, with 2% going to a foundation, thus allowing the option to adopt the model of Alive and BTC. Two models that are established for PPP relationships in the country. If BPL wishes to terminate the agreement unilaterally without cause, they have that right, and they can buy the rest of the shares at fair market value. So they have an option right in that if they terminate the agreement, and by the way, that arrangement is the same exact arrangement, word for word, that the former administration put in the cruise terminal agreement.
While a part of the New Deal focuses on island grid involving the transmission and distribution of power, the generation of power by Bahamas Power and Light has also been a cause for concern. But despite this, Senator Pinder says BPL's power generation aspects will not be privatized, as the New Deal is only to replace additional generation that is already being provided by outside sources.
I want to be clear, crystal clear here, crystal clear, because we have mischievous people in the room. This replaces generation already being provided by third parties. BPL generation is not being sold, and BPL will continue to generate on its own as well.
All right.
Not laying off nobody. Not laying off nobody.
In the meantime, as it relates to BPL, Prime Minister Philip Davis says consumers should be able to see savings in your electricity bills by the end of July, even though the new energy deal is only in the beginning stages. You're listening to JCN News. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back after these commercials.